Hello, and welcome back to another Breyer customization video. Today we'll be giving a makeover to one of my favorite models, the American Saddlebred Stallion by Kathleen Moody. I think Breyer really came into the new millennium strong with this model in 2000. It was really ahead of its time. I had been looking for a body for a while with not much luck, but one day while I was in town waiting for a dentist appointment, this poor beat-up model popped up for sale on Marketplace. So with freshly cleaned teeth, I met up with the seller and secured my next victim. I don't think she knew what he was in for. While I do like the original mane and tail, I wanted to change it up, so they have to go. I did save them though, and hopefully can use them in a future project. Making sure to wear respirator, glasses, gloves, and long sleeves, I used my thin metal cutting disc on my Dremel. I cut it just far enough so I can pull it off and it doesn't fall onto the blade. I clean up the leftovers with a sanding drum. His legs were a little wonky, so I did heat them up with my embossing gun. Once I carefully bend them where they belong, I make it permanent by dunking them into the ice water. Yes, the well was having iron issues, I promise it's actually water. To make a base for the new tail, I drill in a hole a little bit bigger than my wire. I will be gluing it into place with my 2-part glue. After that dried, I also reinforced it with my 2-part epoxy that I will be using to sculpt the tail. To help my foil not slide off the main wire, I wrap a thin wire all the way down. Then I can build up the bulk of the tail. It's going to be quite thin, so I try not to overdo it. You may have noticed, but I did make sure to sand any seams and logos off camera, so he is nice and smooth. I secure it and add a little extra thickness with hot glue. Now I can start sculpting. I start at the bottom with my epoxy noodles. I use my silicone tool and Xacto knife dipped in rubbing alcohol to help sculpt in the texture. His tail's going to be so long that this will touch the ground. I make sure to put foil underneath so it won't get messed up or stick to my table. Here you can see by the color difference that this is day 2 of sculpting the tail, and the rest had already hardened. I try to add different sized noodles and have certain segments going different directions to help it be more visually interesting and not just a solid blob of hair. I also really love this Cuticle tool for adding detail. With the tail done, I move on to the mane. You can see I drew an idea of where I wanted it to be with a paint pen. It's the same process as the tail, but I do use more bent in half noodles to help blend it into the neck. I did have to restart this and completely take off all the epoxy at one point because I didn't like how it was looking. So definitely don't be afraid to just start over if something isn't working out. It's definitely a lot easier to remove it before it's hardened. With that all hardened, it's time for my favorite part, airbrushing. Of course, first I need to prime. I did this first coat and then another after a second round of sanding to get them really looking nice. For my inspiration, I found a gorgeous light buckskin saddlebred named Pantheon. Since he is so light, my first step will be covering the primer with a white base. I do 2 layers of this, drying with the hairdryer in between. Now I can start to build up this buttermilk buckskin color. Buckskins have always been tricky for me. I always end up going too yellow. So for this I added a little yellow to a lot of white, but then I also used a single drop of purple to help dull the yellow. I do mix all of my colors directly in the airbrush cup and stir with a little wooden stick. Since I don't really use much paint, I don't end up wasting anything. This also means I have to remember exactly how I mix things if I need more paint. But it does get pretty easy with practice. I always make sure to do test sprays on my cardboard here before applying it to the model. You can see I am leaving some white visible as a highlight, and blending it into the tan color. I always try and work light to dark because it's much easier than trying to build up light colors or white over a darker shade. Next I can go in with a slightly darker shade to add shadows. Another good thing about mixing new colors is it gives a variety to the shades and keeps the paint job from looking flat. This shade here is slightly more red than the last, which gives a nice subtle effect. It works as long as it's consistent over the entire model, which is why this turntable is super helpful. Another thing to note is that I didn't use my super bright studio lights for this paint job, since it's so light and would be harder to see with the harsh shadows. Now I can go in with black and shade all of the points and underside. I let that dry for at least a day and then sealed it with a matte spray. I will be giving him some markings with my thinned down acrylic. It doesn't take much over the tan, but I do need a few layers over the black. I make sure to go over it with a clear matte varnish, since this golden brand paint tends to be shiny. I also add the white base for the eyes. Next I use black to touch up areas I didn't want to get too close to with the airbrush. Personally, I don't really like a sharp edge where the hair meets the body, so I blend all those areas with black pastel. I seal with a matte spray and do another layer so it isn't grainy. I'll be doing the nose blushing with these two eyeshadow shades. I touch up the edges with my kneaded eraser. I also blend the top of the socks. While I'm at it, I also add a little brown to them, so they are more natural looking. Once that's sealed, I can start the back hooves with a few base layers of beige acrylic. I paint a white line on the top and blend it down with water. I add streaks by dry brushing and blending it in. More streaks with some white. And then back the other way with black. I forgot to film the bottoms of the hooves, so check out my previous videos if you want to see that. It's probably my least favorite part to paint. While having a possessed horse has been fun, it's finally time to give him some proper eyes. I start with black, working it out until it's the size I want. I paint a brown oval, and while it's still wet, add in lighter shading with tan and gold. Once the hooves and eyes were completely dry, it's time to add a gloss varnish. Off camera, I sealed him to a satin finish, and now we're all done! I decided to name him Basilica, as a nod to the beautiful horse I used for reference named Pantheon. I'm so excited to finally do a custom on this iconic model. I think Breyer has something planned for their anniversary autumn next year, so I'm eager for that. I also picked up another body at Breyer Fest, so let me know what color you think I should do a second one in. And as always, thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. Don't forget to boop that like button and subscribe for more projects.